Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to my October TBR. I have a bunch of more spooky books on this list, but I wanted to start out with stuff that wasn't quite as spooky. So first on this list is Hollowpox by Jessica Townsend. This came out on the 29th of September and I had it coming in the mail as I'm filming this video, so I'm assuming that by the time this is live it will have arrived. So that is a book that is a middle grade and it's about a girl named Morrigan Crow. She believes that she's cursed, and on, I think it's the night of her 11th birthday, Jupiter North comes to save her from her family and from this curse, and he whisks her away into the land of Nevermore. And in the second book there is like a magical school situation, and in the first book there is a tournament and a trials kind of story. In the third book I think it's more mystery focused, but I'm really excited to read on, and this series brings me a lot of magic and joy, so that is why I'm adding it onto this list first. Next on this list is also something that is going to be not quite as spooky, kind of, but not quite. It is the next Dresden book. I don't know at this point what I'll be up to by the time this video goes up, but I'm a decent way into the Dresden Files series at the moment, and I'm just going through those audiobooks as quickly as I can. My partner and I are listening to them, so when he's done with one I can listen to it next. So I'm assuming that I'll be listening to some of them in October. At the moment I've finished Blood Rites, which is book 6, and so I'm assuming that I'll continue on. If you haven't heard of Dresden before, I imagine a lot of people have, but it is a magical urban fantasy story. It follows a guy named Harry Dresden, and he does contract work for the police force. He also does random contract work, like freelance work, for anyone who hires him as like a PI, and a lot of the time he ends up in dire straits, caught between a case and a bunch of other moving parts. And this has like vampires, it has werewolves, it has demons and magic, and it also has an urban fantasy setting. So it is set in Chicago and it's got a real life police force in it as well. So he's got to balance his like human life and his magic life as well. And there's a whole council of wizards and stuff. It's just such a great series. It's always funny and it always has such rich character development, and I'm loving the series. I have a playlist of reviews for all of the books in the series so far because I'm reviewing them as I go, so you can kind of experience my excitement with me as I read each book. So I'll link that down below in the description if you want to go and check out what the series is about. Okay, now I'm looking at the stack of books beside me and I believe that we are up to the spooky portion of this video. So you will notice that there is like kind of a trend here. I'm going for more apocalyptic books for my spooky stuff and supernatural for my spooky stuff rather than horror, because I don't really read too much horror. I like it incorporated into other stories rather than just being like a horror thriller on its own. The first book on this list is Horns by Joe Hill. I saw the movie of this a while ago. I liked Daniel Radcliffe's performance. I liked the storyline in it. I know that it's about this guy whose wife is murdered and he wants to get to the root of who the killer was, but he also at the same time grows horns, which is why obviously it's called Horns. And because he's grown these horns, people in his life, whether he knows them or not, start telling him their deepest, darkest secret. It's kind of like he's the devil, and because of his horns curse, everyone in the town believes that he murdered his wife, but obviously he didn't because he's trying to investigate the murder of his wife. So it was quite a dark film and it had quite a graphic rape scene in the film as well, and I'm anticipating that's probably going to be part of the book as well. So if that's something that upsets you, then probably steer clear of this book. But I'm looking forward to the darkness of it, and I think it's going to delve more deeply into the characters that we didn't get to see enough of in the film. So I'm looking forward to reading this, and I hope reading Joe Hill is up to the standard that I'm expecting it to be. He is Stephen King's son, so I'm expecting quite a lot from him. And then next we have another Joe Hill book, and that is The Fireman, and I've been putting this off because I've been waiting for October to read it so I can kind of knock 2 of his books out of the park in the same month. At least that's the hope, because I have a few long books on this to be read pile. But anyway, The Fireman, I don't know too much about except that it's a dystopian, like apocalyptic book, and it follows a woman who is pregnant and trying to safely have her child. But the apocalypse that has happened is because people have succumbed to this illness of when they combust into flame, and the fireman is a character who either has this illness or doesn't, and he hasn't burst into flame despite having this illness. I'm not quite sure obviously what the actual plot is, and I've kind of stayed away from reading too much of the back because in the past I've read the blurbs of books and they've spoiled parts of the story for me, and I want to go into these with as much mystery and intrigue as I can. So that is what I guess The Fireman is about, and I will report back to see whether I have enjoyed it or not. And next is another huge book. This is by far the biggest book on this reading list so far because it clocks in at over 900 pages long, and if you've seen my previous videos you'll probably guess what it is. It's The Passage by Justin Cronin. This again is another apocalyptic book, but but I believe the beginning is not post-apocalyptic. It starts in our like present time, and it spans a few decades maybe in a time span, and it follows a few key characters, multiple perspective kind of scenario, and the zombie kind of creatures in here are more like vampires or ghouls. So it's not a straight up zombie apocalypse book, but it sounds like it's got enough interesting factors to catch my attention, and that is why I've held on to this, because I've had it for like 3 years, and this is one of my older books that I've got on my to be read pile. So I'm really hoping that I can knock it out of the park this month, because my reading has started to pick up lately. So after reading like 13 books in August and a decent amount in September, I'm hoping that I can clock this as well, but I'm not sure if I'll go the audiobook or not. I'll see how I go. But if you've read this, let me know, because I'd be interested to see what your star rating was. I only see this talked about if people really don't like it, and if people really do like it, I haven't really seen people fall in the middle. So it'd be interesting to see what people think. So let me know if you've read this down below, or if it's been on your TBR for like 3 years like me. And we have another zombie book, and it is Highway Bodies by Alison Evans. This is a queer zombie apocalypse book. I believe it follows 3 different queer characters in it, and I don't know if they meet up and form an alliance like a found family situation, but that's all I know about it really. It says, who will you rely on in the zombie apocalypse? I guess they've got to rely on each other. I've read Alison's work before and I've really liked their writing, so I assume that I'm going to like this as well. And I was meant to read this in December 2019, and for some reason I just got into a bit of a reading slump and I couldn't get to it, so I've put it off for a long time, almost 12 months, so I need to just get to it, I think, because my friend went to the book launch and got it signed for me, which was lovely, and I haven't read it yet, so shame on me. I need to get to this one. And then I believe this is the last book on my planned to be read list. I assume I'll either read more or less than the books behind me on this TBR, depending on my motivation, but it is World War Z, and I've been putting this off again for a very long time. It's kind of the theme of this TBR. I don't want to put this stuff off any longer, and October is really the opportunity for me to read it to a theme, I guess. And World War Z is unlike the movie. It goes into detail about like the first outbreak of the zombie case, like Patient Zero, and then it is told in like a vignette format of people's first-hand accounts of what happened to them in the zombie apocalypse. I think it's told previously, during and after the apocalypse, but I'm not quite sure. I did read some of this physically and I did listen to some of the audiobook, so I have tried to read this twice, and the audiobook that I really want to listen to I can't seem to find because it's not the one on Audible, and I believe it's got a bunch of quite well-known actors in it. One of them is Nathan Fillion, and they do different chapters for each actor in this book, and I really want to experience that version, but for the life of me I cannot find where to get it, and I would love to purchase it so I can listen to it, because I don't think I'm going to get through it if I read it physically. I think it's going to be quite dry, so I'm really hoping that I get to this one, but if I don't because I can't find the audiobook, then don't be surprised, because I'm kind of just throwing this on the end of this list in the hope that I will find that audiobook. And if I don't, maybe I'll just have to read one chapter every week or so until I've finished it. I don't know. I've gone to unhaul this a few times, but Dave's like, no, keep it, because he really enjoyed listening to that version of the audiobook, and then he forgot where he got it from, and I don't know how to get that version. So I'm just going to have this hanging around on my to be read pile until I can find that audio version, I think. And then the last book, I actually forgot that this was on my to be read pile because I didn't have it physically, and it is The Tower of Nero by Rick Riordan. This is the final book in his Trials of Apollo series. It is the final installment, I believe, in his entire Percy Jackson sequence of books. So it's quite a big deal that he's ending this series now, because I read it when I was in high school, when I was like 16, and I've like grown up with it, I guess. And so the fact that it's ending is quite bittersweet, but I think he'll do a really good job of closing everything out. Hopefully he revisits it again in the future, but he's done a lot of writing for that series in various forms for a long time, so whether he continues it or not, I don't know. But The Tower of Nero is the last in the Trials of Apollo, and the first book in that series follows Apollo. Well, obviously that series follows Apollo in general, but Apollo is obviously the god of art and music, and he offends Zeus and gets kicked out of Olympus, and so he has to make his way as Lester, a 16-year-old boy who stumbles into Camp Half-Blood, and he goes on a quest with a bunch of other demigods that we know and love. And if you're going to read this series, I'd recommend not starting with this series, only because it spoils all the stuff before it. So definitely read them in publication order if you want to read these books. I love Rick's writing style, and I'm super highly anticipating The Tower of Nero. It comes out at the start of October, so I'm just really excited about it. So these are all of the books, plus audiobooks obviously, that I want to read in October. This is a pretty ambitious stack for me because I've been reading, about this much in a few months, like a month and a half rather than just a month. But hopefully if I get ahead on these in the end of September, I can actually finish the rest in October. So we'll see how I go with these. If you've read any of them, please do let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to hear. But thank you so much for watching this video. I will chat down in the comments to you, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye.